الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear respected people, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of An Ayah a Day Shows You the Way. Subhanallah, we're on Juz 26, which means there's only 4 to 5 days left of this blessed month. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts thus far, forgive our sins and alleviate the plight in Palestine, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So inshallah today we'll be covering Juz 26, more specifically Surah Fath, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا لتؤمنوا بالله ورسوله وتعزروه وتوقروه وتسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in translation in Surah Al-Fath, indeed, we have sent you, O Muhammad, as a witness, giver of good news and a warner. لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, so that you can believe in Allah, His Messenger, وَتُعَزِّرُوهُ, and make Him great, وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ, and dignify Him greatly, وَتُسَبِّحُوهُ, and declare his praise and glory, bukratan wa asila, day and night, morning and evening, basically. Subhanallah, here though you see many instructions. You see that Allah has said, we've sent you, O Muhammad, as a witness, giver of good tidings and warner, so that you can believe in Allah, His Messenger, so that you can dignify Him, exalt Him, or give Him respect greatly, and declare His glory. But why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to the Prophet ﷺ, so that you can believe in Allah and His Messenger? I mean, that's what it appears like when you hear it in translations. But subhanallah, you hear in the Arabic language, there's a beautiful art known as iltifat. And the scholars of the Arabic language, they said that iltifat basically means التحويل في التعبير الكلامي من اتجاه إلى آخر, which basically means that the meaning of iltifat is to change the address or direction of address and speech from one party to another instantaneously, in the same moment. So some of these instructions weren't for the Prophet ﷺ. So the first statement was towards the Prophet ﷺ, and then the second ayah was for the believers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet ﷺ, we have sent you as a witness, giver of glad tidings and warner, so that you, O Muslims, can believe in Allah, His Messenger, dignify Him, i.e. the Prophet ﷺ, give Him great respect, and then it goes back to Allah to declare the glory of Allah day and night. All of these addresses are happening instantaneously from one people to another people. For example, when you go to lectures, university lectures or even Islamic lectures, you see that the genders are separated. There's a segregation. So there's the women and the men. And say there's a task that's happening. The lecturer or the teacher would say, you guys do this, you women do that. So it's an address to two people at the same time. But in a greater way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing millions and billions of people. And at the time, Allah is addressing the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, the Muslims around the Sahaba, and then He's addressing us too at the same time. That's what iltifat is, changing the direction of your address to many parties of people in the same time. And this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does perfectly in the Quran. So, this is what iltifat means. Now going to the meaning, Inna arsalnaka shahida, you heard that in other places of the Quran, Inna arsalnaka bilhaqqi bashira wa nadhira. So the word bashir has a linguistic relationship with mubashir, and nadhir as well is the same. But now here the word shahid is entered here, i.e. witness. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually saying to the Prophet ﷺ here that we aren't just sending you as someone who gives glad tidings and is a warner. We are sending you as a witness to the people you give da'wah to. Which is actually quite scary. Because the Prophet ﷺ gave da'wah to so many people. So many people. People accepted, people rejected. And sadly, those who rejected, the Prophet ﷺ, he is going to testify against them on Qiyamah. And by extension, this should actually apply to us Muslims as well, on an individual point, that when we are receiving advice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, somebody tells you to pray, somebody tells you to fast, somebody tells you to lower your gaze, somebody is giving you advice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Like, there's no worldly gain. This advice is just for the betterment of your relationship with Allah. And he said, nah bro, I'm okay. Like, I'm going to my own grave. Or only God can judge me. In effect, what you've basically done is the person who's giving you that advice, he will be a witness against you on Qiyamah. That's what you've basically done if you don't take the advice on board. Similarly, how the Prophet ﷺ gave da'wah to people, some people accepted, some people rejected. Those who rejected, the Prophet ﷺ was going to testify against them. And similarly today, in a world where you have so much confusion around, only God can judge, only God can judge. Of course, Allah Azza wa Jal will judge you. But from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent believers to advise people for His sake before they even reach the judgment. So, and if they don't accept that advice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then basically you are just accumulating the numbers of witnesses against yourself. One witness suffices on Qiyamah. Imagine having 10. Subhanallah. So this is what we learn from the word shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. And then you learn characteristics of da'wah, because we are all messengers of the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we should be a people who are giving glad tidings to people, and we should also warn them at the same time from evil that takes place. So we should give glad tidings to people that there's salvation in the world where there's war, pillaging of resources from, well, now they're poor, but before they're rich countries, gender changes, confusion, suicide, all of these things that are occurring in the Western civilization. We should be mubashirin. We should be giving glad tidings to the world to say, listen, it's not all bad and it's not all dark. The reason why the world is the way it is because Islam is absent on the top level. If Islam is present, we're going to live, inshallah, very nice times, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And there's so many prophecies to say so as well. So that's regarding mubashirin, we should be giving good glad tidings to the people. Nadhira is also warning them that if we don't have Islam as a complete way of life, then you're basically going to see what you're seeing now, but 10 times worse. And when you die, when you pass away, your children are going to be faced with this. Like, you may have the iman, and you may have the fortitude, and you may have the mindset to battle with what's going on today. But what's the guarantee that your children will uphold these values? What's the guarantee that their children, your grandchildren, will be able to fight the heavy tides and waves that are being hit against the globe today in its values and beliefs? So we have to come as people give good tidings, and at the same time draw contrast between Islam and the stark reality and warn people against him. Where it says, لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet ﷺ so that you believers, now it changes the party of address, you believe in Allah and His Messenger. وَتُعَزِّرُوهُ وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ. SubhanAllah, the word ta'zir, again in the Arabic language, sadly in the English language, you can only resort to like respect, glorify, exalt, dignify greatly. You don't find a precise meaning for Arabic words. It's just how poor the English language is. But what does ta'zir mean? It's when you respect somebody out of sheer awe of them and a little bit of fear at the same time. Like, for example, if someone was to come into the room that you respect so much, you could be like slouching on the chair. But when this person comes in, out of your ta'zir for him, you just sit up straight, you sit properly, straight posture, and you've now changed your complete demeanor in the presence of this person. So ta'zir means you respect and dignify someone out of complete respect and sheer awe of who they are. And I'll give you another example in Egypt. And may Allah bless our teachers. May Allah bless, every single person we came across who gave us these characteristics up until today. It was, in fact, a practice. It wasn't really common. Some people didn't used to do this, but the others did. And this is something I learned very early on. So in Egypt, when we'd go to our classes, we'd obviously have breaks for salah. So we'd go to the masjid, obviously, and pray our salah there. And some of the teachers that would walk with you, they'd walk and they'd kind of lock arms with you. It's not something you're used to. I mean, if a man did this in the UK, you'd think it's very weird. But over there, it's a custom. So you'd go there, and then you get to the masjid, and at the door of the masjid, he takes his shoes off. Out of ta'zeer for our teachers, we should take their shoes and put them on the rack. So even before he's bent down to pick up his shoes, the student's already taken them and put them on the rack. Why? Because he's somebody who's teaching us the deen. He's somebody who's teaching us the language of the Quran. How can you not have ta'zeer for such a person? That you let him bend down and pick up his own shoes to put on the rack. But out of your ta'zeer as a student of knowledge for him, you pick up his shoes. Same way the father comes in. It was a trait previously in Islamic culture that when the father comes in, again, the same thing, he takes his shoes off. He's not the one that's meant to put them on the rack. You go put them on the rack. He's the same father that if he, for example, comes in the front room, he takes his coat off, you take his coat and hang it up on the coat rack. And you should, again, all of this is ta'zeer. When the food comes, don't eat your food before your father or mother has started to eat. Eat after they've taken their first bite. All of this is to do with ta'zeer because of the sheer respect and awe you hold for these people. So that's what ta'zeer means. And the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we should have ta'zeer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now a question comes. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not around with us today in the physical form. Like, how can we do ta'zeer of him? We can't, take his shoes to the rack. We can't, for example, kiss his forehead. We can't help him in his labor, in his work affairs. We can't do that. Prophet ﷺ is no longer here. So how do we have ta'zeer for the Prophet ﷺ? We have ta'zeer for the Prophet ﷺ by one thing. There's a dua in the Sunnah which is Allahumma ansur man nasara deena Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Oh Allah, support those who support the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is how we do ta'zeer of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So yes, you should read abundantly a lot of salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But another great form of ta'zeer of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is to defend his honor and carry his message to the whole world. That's actually a form of dignifying and exalting the status of the Prophet ﷺ. Defending his honor, i.e. defending Islam, defending the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, and carrying this message to the entire world, Muslims and non-Muslims. So this is how we do ta'zeer of the Prophet ﷺ. And again, tuwaqqiruhu means again to respect someone highly. And then now it comes to وَتُسَبِّحُوهُ, and it's not talking about the Prophet here now, it's talking about Allah, to declare His glory, His perfection, to do وَتُسَبِّحُوهُ, so that you can glorify Him morning and night. Now how can we glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala morning and night? In fact, somebody who doesn't give the due amount or credit to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they can never declare the glory of their Creator precisely. And this is why if you look at other religions, they say strange stuff about their creators. Very like, in other walks of life, they will say, God is my friend, or, God is my boy, or, God's got my back. Do you see? Like certain phrases that they use and nature of language, which doesn't befit a slave and a master. But then you ask yourself, okay, how can someone say such a thing? Well, then look at their relationships between them and their prophets. When their prophets are being ridiculed by the Western liberal order today, they do nothing. They do nothing. So it's then understandable why their relationship with their Creator, they can't declare His glory and perfection in the way it's meant to be. Because why? We declare the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of how the Prophet ﷺ was in awe of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we've got a perfect model to follow. So the way we in fact declare Allah's glory perfectly is by giving this honor, believing in the Prophet ﷺ, and carrying this message to the entire world and respecting the Prophet ﷺ. This is how we do glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. So I pray you all found benefit in this reminder. All good is from Allah, all bad is from me. Please overlook my shortcomings. And inshallah I'll see you for another episode tomorrow. Until then, barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
فما لك في الأرض درب صحيح